Mr Deputy Speaker, I share the honourable gentleman's sense of weariness about our continuing necessity to debate Northern Ireland business on the floor of this House, and hope very much that we will see before too very long democracy in Northern Ireland restored to where it should be, and that is to Stormont. However, we have to contemplate the possibility that that day may be some time off. And I share the desire expressed already for some form of roadmap, some sense of when it may be necessary to bring powers back to Whitehall in order to make sure that Northern Ireland is properly governed, because there can be little doubt, and my Select Committee certainly has taken evidence to this effect, that the good governance of Northern Ireland is suffering big time right now, and decisions are not being made in the interests of the ordinary lived experience of people in Northern Ireland that should be being made because of the absence of ministerial decision-making. And that is sustainable for a while, but not too very long. And it's become increasingly clear to us that public services are suffering, that decisions are not being made, that infrastructure is not being put in place, and that civil servants who are trying to do their best clearly have their limitations. And that's been proved in the courts, despite the guidance that's been issued by the Secretary of State. And there will come a time where ministers here in London are going to have to start making those decisions with a heavy heart. And it probably is not acceptable to kick this particular can too much further down the road. I share the temptation expressed by the honourable gentleman for East Antrim that we should perhaps think about calling the Assembly and see who turns up, but he knows as well as I do, that recall would be very short-lived indeed because of the need for cross-community consent. Of course I give way.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Would agree with me that it may well be short-lived, but one significant advantage convening of the Assembly would prove, beyond any doubt, is who are the willing and who are the unwilling.
That's as may be, but he will have gathered from my preamble that what I'm actually interested in is ministerial decision-making, and I rather suspect that there will be very, very few decisions made by ministers in the short space of time between the convening of the Assembly and it breaking down, and it certainly, under the legislation, would not have legitimacy. Now, the date of the 25th, of course I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I can understand the member's cynicism and his caution in all of this, but since publicly Sinn Féin, who I assume he was referring to, have made it quite clear that they do not object to going back into the Assembly, does he not think that it would at least be a useful exercise to test the sincerity of Sinn Féin spokesmen who almost on a daily basis now are saying that they wish to go back into the Assembly? If the doors were opened, the Secretary of State invited all of the parties, then we would see whether or not those assurances, which are given with a straight face on the TV every night practically, are sincere or not.
Well, I suspect the honourable gentleman has his own views on the sincerity of the party to which he refers, but the preoccupation of the Secretary of State, I suspect, is the good governance of Northern Ireland. And in that respect, I suspect we wouldn't be moved much further on were we to recall the Assembly and see who turns up. The date of the 25th of August is an interesting one. As has been said already, not much is likely to happen between now and then, particularly given the marching season. And what happens on the 25th of August? It seems to me that there could be a throwing of the electoral dice in order to work out perhaps a way forward in this, because something might turn up. The numbers may change and it may be possible to form an executive. The sense is that that would not happen. We're then, of course, faced with another important date, and that is the 31st of October 2019, and the latest in the deadlines for this Brexit journey. One thing has been made very clear in terms of the chronology, and that is that in the event of a no-deal Brexit, there would have to be some form of direct rule from Westminster. That's the only certainty that really we have been given by ministers. I would like to know from the Minister, therefore, whether it is his working assumption that on the 25th of August there will be an election called in very short order, because that would give a very small window between then and the 31st of October in which to hold elections and perhaps have a slightly different outcome than the one that we have at the moment, that may perhaps just be crucial. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. As the Minister said, this is a very, very short bill that is unobjectionable, and like most right honourable members, I can't wait to get on to seed potatoes, which is the second matter of Northern Ireland business that we'll be debating this evening.
Madam Deputy Speaker.